Good morning, sixth grade. This is the notes for Chapter 35, Daily Life in the Roman Empire. Nearly 1 million people lived in the city of Rome. The forum was its center. The original forum was an open area. It was used for merchant stalls for them to sell goods, and it was for viewing races and games and plays. The forum became a sprawling complex of government buildings, meeting halls, temples, theaters, monuments, and it was the heart of the life in Rome. The empire had large cities, but most of the people lived in the country. Although Rome was full of beautiful temples and stately palaces and flowering gardens, most of its people lived in tiny apartments crammed in narrow, dirty streets. People and goods flowed into Rome from the four corners of the empire, as well as from China and India. Wealthy Romans, which was a very small percentage of the population, spent enormous sums of money on silks and jewelry and jeweled weapons and perfumes and musical instruments. They decorated their homes with statues and fountains and fine pottery to keep the poor from turning into an angry mob. The Roman emperors donated food and provided entertainment such as gladiator games and chariot races for the poor to watch. Romans believed in the rule of law, law and order, but in the empire, the ultimate source of the law was the emperor. He was in control. Laws were strict, but crime was common. Any Romans could accuse someone else of a crime, but a jury decided the case. A jury is of their peers. The Senate continued to meet, and senators had high status in society. Religion was a part of their daily life. Romans made offerings to the gods. Festivals and holy days were held throughout the year. Each home had an altar for household gods and spirits, and the Romans also honored their emperors as gods. Family life, each family was ruled by a paterfamilias, or the father of the family. Roman men were expected to provide for their family. At 9 days old, a baby was given a bulla, which he or she wore throughout childhood. Between 14 and 18, a boy became a man, and girls became adults when they were married, which was somewhere between 12 and 18. Weddings were held at a temple. The bride wore a white toga and a long veil. The grooms also wore a white toga along with leather shoes. They had shined with animal fat. However, a new husband did not become the paterfamilias until his own father died. So the fathers actually remained the paterfamilias. Only the rich had kitchens in their homes. The poor cooked on small grills, or they bought fast food at places called Thermopylae, where people could purchase hot and cold foods that were ready to eat, kind of like fast food that we have now. The main foods were bread and beans and spices and vegetables and cheeses and meats and garum. Drinks could be plain water or hot water with herbs and honey. Wealthy Romans lived in grand houses. They built them with stone and marble. They were constructed around a central atrium. Beyond the atrium, there were many rooms for their family and guests. The fanciest room was the dining room. The poor were in apartment buildings that were cramped, they were noisy, they were dirty. They really had filth and disease-carrying rats that caused sickness, that it spread everywhere. Fire was another danger, especially for the poor. because a lot of their apartment buildings were made of wood. And so if they caught fire, it would destroy the entire buildings. Um, Many poor children in Rome learned trades instead of attending school, so whatever their fathers did. Wealthier boys and girls were tutored by their fathers or by slaves until they were 6. Then boys went to school. Roman boys learned Latin and Greek, math and science and literature and music and public speaking. Upper class boys remained in school until 12 or 13. Roman boys typically became soldiers or doctors or politicians or lawyers. Girls might become dentists or real estate agents or tutors, while some female slaves or freedwomen could become midwives, which are people who help women have babies, to deliver babies. The rich enjoyed plays and musical performances. Both the rich and poor often relaxed at Rome's public bathhouses. Um, Besides celebrating many festivals, rich and poor alike enjoyed viewing gladiator games and chariot races. Roman emperors made sure to provide the poor with bread and like food and these entertainment venues. Romans watched gladiators fight in large public arenas like the Colosseum. Both men and women were gladiators. Usually they were slaves or prisoners of war, although some won or bought their freedom eventually. But a lot of them would die or remain slaves. A favorite gathering place was the Circus Maximus, a huge racetrack that could seat or accommodate about 200,000 spectators. 90% of the empire's people lived in the country instead of in the city area. Wealthy Romans owned big country estates with large homes that they called villas. Farms provided much of the food for the cities. Slaves did much of the farm work, and many country people were not slaves, but their lives were challenging. They lived in huts and they worked on their own small farms or on great estates. That is the chapter. Have a great day.